In this video, I will do a full beginner introduction to the Dremel tools and Rotary tools. By the end of this video, you will know how to use a Dremel, you will learn what the different bits do, and I will show you some valuable resources to help you navigate the world of Rotary tools and its countless bits and attachments. Let's get started. So what is a Dremel? Dremel is actually a brand owned by Bosch, and they make many different power tools. But when you hear people talking about the Dremel tool, 99% of the time, they're talking about the Rotary tool. People even refer to Rotary tools that are not made by Dremel as Dremel tools. A Dremel has a bit at the front of the tool that rotates really fast. You can use different bits for doing different tasks. Here are some of the most common tasks that you can do with a Dremel. Sanding wood, cutting wood, shaping wood, cutting metal, grinding metal, polishing metal, cutting plastics, removing rust, and drilling tiny holes. There is many different Dremel models for different purposes. We have the smaller models. These are not that powerful and are supposed to be used for lighter tasks, like for example engraving glass. The advantage of the smaller tools is that you have more control and it is easier to do detailed work. The more powerful models like the Dremel 4000 is more of an all-around tool that can be used for any task that a Rotary tool is supposed to be used for. Like for example cutting metal, but you can still do detailed work with it if you get the flex shaft attachment. One thing to note is that Dremel tools comes in both corded and battery powered models. Both are good, and which one you should get is entirely dependent on your needs. The newest Dremel model is the 8260 and it is battery powered. The most cost-effective Dremel model is the Dremel 4000 in my opinion. The most powerful corded model is the 4300 or 4250, and the best model for light-duty detailed work is the Stylo Plus. We change bits at the front of the tool. To remove the bit, we hold down the shaft lock button while turning the collet nut with a wrench until you can pull out the bit. Most Dremel models also comes with an easy twist nose cap. You can use this instead of the wrench if you want to. Insert the new bit, hold the shaft lock button and turn the collet to lock in the bit. Hidden underneath the collet nut there is a small collet. This holds the bit in place when you tighten the collet nut. Most of the time you don't have to change this collet, as it is 1/8 of an inch and most bits use a 1/8 of an inch shank. But if you're going to use a small drill bit, you have to replace the collet according to the size of the drill bit. The power control is either a button or a slider. On the Stylo Plus, it is a small button. On the newer models, it is a slider. And on the Dremel 3000, the power button and the speed control is the same slider. The speed control changes the RPM of the Dremel. RPM is short for revolutions per minute. And a Dremel can reach speeds of anywhere from 5000 to 35,000 revolutions per minute depending on the model you have. Some models has a slider like this and some models has a wheel like this. In most cases we will use an RPM from 20,000 to 30,000 RPMs. This hook is used for hanging up the tool when you want to use the flex shaft attachment. The bits are what makes Rotary tools so versatile. It is hard to know what bit does what in the beginning. When buying a Dremel you will usually get a bit package like this with the tool. All of the Dremel brand bits has a number associated with them. This makes it easy for searching up, so you can learn what the bit can be used for. You can use the Dremel website to search up the bits. Just write in the bit number in the search bar and the bit will show up. You get a lot of information about the bit here. Here I searched for the wood cutting wheel, which has the product number SC544. And we get a lot of information about the wheel. Like what materials you can use it for, the recommended RPMs, how you're supposed to use it, and much more. Usually, when you buy a new Dremel, you will also get a poster like this one. Many of the most common Dremel bits will be displayed here and it has a whole bunch of information. So this might be useful to hang up in the workshop. You can also find most bits on Amazon by just writing in Dremel plus the bit number afterwards. Let's take a look at some of the most common Dremel bits and what they can be used for. The sanding drum is used for shaping wood. It is great for rounding over sharp edges and wood carving. You can also use the sanding drum on metal, but it will wear out quicker. To change the sanding bands, you have to loosen the screw at the top of the drum with a small wrench. Remove the band and secure the new one by tightening the screw. The sanding disc is used for smoothing out surfaces. It uses the 402 mandrel to attach the disc. It can be used on a wide range of different materials. This includes wood and metal. The abrasive buffing wheel is used for polishing metal and wood. It leaves a good shine on the material you use it on, but it will not remove much material like the sanding drum would. The reinforced metal cutting disc is used for cutting metal. This is my favorite cutting disc for cutting metal with the Dremel. It uses the EC402 mandrel. Many of the Dremel bits uses this easy lock system. One large advantage with this is that you do not have to remove the mandrel from the Dremel when changing the bits. This is a smaller cutting disc for cutting metal. It works fine for light work, but it is very brittle, so be careful when cutting metal with this because it might break while you are cutting. The felt polishing pads are used for polishing metals. You have different sizes and shapes that you attach to the 401 mandrel. You then use a polishing compound that will act as your abrasive when polishing. Personally, I don't use these a lot. The grinding stones are mainly used for removing sharp edges and uneven surfaces in metal. They come in many different shapes and sizes for different applications. I don't like to use these on softer metals like for example aluminum because it clogs up the bit. The wire brushes are made for cleaning and removing impurities. They are really great for removing rust from metal and getting into tight corners. But always protect your eyes when using these. The small metal wires has a tendency to come loose and fly all over. The nylon bristle brushes are designed for cleaning hard plastics and general polishing of metals. They are great for reaching into tight spaces. These can also be used with a polishing compound. I will also include one of my all-time favorite bits, which is the EC544 wood cutting wheel, which is the best Dremel bit for cutting wood in my opinion. If you want a more complete list of all the bits where I go into way more detail, I would recommend watching this video in the top right corner after this video. Even though a Dremel is a fairly small power tool and can seem harmless, it can still do some damage. So we need to take some precautions when using it. Just remember that you are always in charge of your own safety and of the risks you are willing to take. Here are some of my general safety tips. We always want to use eye protection when using a Dremel. You never know when a bit might shatter. When I first used the Dremel, I didn't know how to lock in the bit properly, so the bit just flew out of the Dremel when I turned on the tool. The face shield can be helpful if the glasses keep fogging up when you are using a dust mask. Use a dust mask whenever you are working with material that produces dust. I always use a dust mask when, for example, sanding. These types of dust masks are the bare minimum. Respirators with filters are much better. If you can, do your work outside or in a well-ventilated area. And if you're using a Dremel for any kind of stone, glass, tile or masonry work, you should read up on what silica dust is and what you can do to protect yourself from it. Make sure that the Dremel is unplugged when changing bits. Sometimes you might accidentally turn it on when you have your hands at the front of the bit. This is especially true with the Dremel Stylo Plus, which has the shaft lock button and the power button right across from each other. You shouldn't really hold the workpiece that you are working on with your hand, especially when using potentially dangerous bits, like for example cutting discs or any kind of saw blade. The Dremel will sometimes do an uncontrollable kickback with some bit, and if your hand is in the way when this happens, it will not be good. You should always secure the piece that you are working on with, for example, clamps or in a vise. And preferably you should hold your Dremel with two hands. But if you're using the sanding drums for wood carving, the potential for danger is not that big. So here it might be acceptable to hold the workpiece to gain more control. And if the sanding drum hits the skin, it will barely scratch it. Attachments are different than bits. The attachment usually attaches onto the threads at the front of the Dremel, and it gives your Dremel some new abilities. One attachment will, for example, make your Dremel into a drill press. Most of the Dremel rotary tools can use the Dremel attachments, but there is a few models that are not compatible with the attachments. For example, the Stylo Plus 2050 does not have the proper threads at the front of the tool. I will leave a link to an attachment compatibility chart in the description below. And the amount of attachments you can get for the Dremel is actually pretty crazy. Here are some of my most used attachments. The flex shaft is by far my most used attachment for the Dremel. It turns your large, powerful Dremel motor into a small little stylus. It is great for doing detailed work when you do not want to sacrifice any of the power. Like for example when you are wood carving. The multi-chuck removes the need for collets. It works similar to the chuck on your cordless drill. And it can take any size of bit as small as 1/32 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch. The multi-chuck is very useful when drilling tiny holes. The cutting guide is used for setting the bit at 90 degrees to a flat surface. This is helpful for cutting wood, cutting drywall or routing wood. The circle cutter gives your Dremel the ability to make circles in a wide range of materials. The workstation turns your Dremel into a drill press. If you need to make a lot of precise small holes in wood or metal, this will be a good attachment for you. The workstation can also position your Dremel at 90 degrees, which is helpful if you want the Dremel to be stationary while you are working. If you want to check out all the other Dremel attachments, I recently made a video on my channel which goes into detail on every single one of them. And that is it for this beginner guide. See you in the next one.